The political crisis revolving around the now halted judicial reform has placed Israel's allies in a tough position, with Washington leading the opposition to the legislation. Just hours after U.S. Ambassador to Israel Tom Knight suggested Benjamin Netanyahu would soon be invited to the White House, President Biden said no such invitation would be forthcoming anytime soon. And the president also made clear his views on the proposed reforms.
Like many strong supporters of Israel, I'm very concerned. And I'm concerned that they get this straight. They cannot continue down this road. And I've sort of made that clear. Hopefully, the Prime Minister will act in a way that he's going to try to work out some genuine compromise, but that remains to be seen.
And while Netanyahu responded that Israel's bond with the U.S. was unshakable, other members of his Likud party reacted furiously. One backbench legislator even said Israel did not need the U.S. and could defend itself. The proposed judicial reform would give the governing coalition major influence on the appointment of Supreme Court judges and weaken the ability of the Supreme Court to review or even overturn laws passed by parliament. For weeks since the reforms were unveiled, tens of thousands of Israelis from different political spectrums have flooded the streets in protest. But it was only after Netanyahu fired his defense minister for calling to halt the reform that the protests made a real impact. After a day of broad national strikes and disruptions, Netanyahu paused the legislation and paved the way for President Herzog to sit down with the different political parties to negotiate. So far, Herzog has met with representatives of both Netanyahu's ruling Likud party and opposition factions in what could be a marathon of meetings. Speaking in an online conference on democracy that many fear is endangered in Israel, Netanyahu expressed optimism about the outcome of the process.
Now, half of people are convinced that the will of the majority, as expressed in the legislative and executive branch, has been, in many ways, obstructed by an all-powerful judiciary that dominates them and doesn't let the public will be expressed. The other half of the people are concerned that maybe, even if this is true, that if any curtailment of judiciary powers is enacted, this would somehow impair and obstruct civil liberties. And I think both considerations have to be taken into account. I think both of them are valid. Both of them are true.
The premier continued to say that he believes a consensus can be reached in the negotiations. Biden, on his part, was very clear on where things could go from here.
What do you hope the Prime Minister will do on that particular law?
I hope he walks away from it.